speaking of teams deciding to, play hardball with a player who wants out, long time ago when Deshaun Watson wanted out just for football reasons, the Texans said, we're going to trade you where we want to trade you and for what we want to trade you. And the NFC may make sense when it's all said and done. Maybe Seattle, who knows? We'd have to wait and see. But meantime, there are much more important issues as it relates to Deshaun Watson, and Charles Robinson is here to break it down. So he's pleading the fifth in his civil disposition today. The grand jury is considering criminal complaints today when it comes to the 22 accusers of sexual misconduct against Deshaun Watson. What are you hearing, Chuck?
Yeah, well, so the grand jury actually is hearing the facts of the case right now. So basically, excuse me, I'm sorry, a little frog in my throat. Basically, the way this goes is the Harris County Prosecutor's Office, they present evidence as procured by the Houston Police Department. A few of the 10 women who have brought criminal complaints against Deshaun Watson to the Houston Police Department will be called to testify before a grand jury. And basically, after hearing all the facts, hearing the testimony from one side, by the way, not from Deshaun Watson's camp, but from the accusers, the grand jury then has to vote. Is there enough evidence here for Deshaun Watson to be indicted on a felony count of sexual assault? I think it would be like a second-degree felony count. At that point, if the jury votes, yes, there's enough evidence here, he is then indicted and has to plead to that felony account, either guilty or not guilty, and the process of the criminal courts then gets underway, not civil, criminal. But as you said, the civil process is running a parallel path right now. They are not related to each other necessarily in terms of what happens inside those rooms themselves. And he is sitting for a deposition today civilly, but he has been instructed by his lawyer, Rusty Hardin, to plead the fifth in all civil depositions until the criminal matter is there's some element of conclusion.
From what you can tell, Charles, is the timing of this grand jury hearing, where we are right now, is this fast compared to quote unquote normal cases? Is it bogged down a bit? I feel like, we as football fans have been watching this for a long time, and honestly, everybody's not been watching it for altruistic reasons. Some people are watching it because we want to know where Deshaun Watson is going to play next, if he's going to be suspended by the NFL. How is this timeline compared to a normal person?
So I had a chance to talk to a prosecutor here in Houston, and from what he told me, I'm sorry, not a prosecutor, defense attorney, and for what he told me, this is fairly normal for someone. He said, look, the timeline of investigation with Deshaun Watson, he said, so if it's essentially 10, 11 months, the Houston Police Department has been looking at this, it's not unusual for this to drag on long enough that we're almost a year out, and then it gets presented to the grand jury. He just says it's not really the prosecutor's office doesn't dictate the pace of investigation, although the prosecutor's office can essentially say, to the Houston Police Department, look, here's what you have brought me. If we bring this to a grand jury, it's likely or unlikely that an indictment is going to come down for this. So that can elongate the process from the police department's standpoint. But I would suspect that whatever was there to be procured in terms of whatever the alleged evidence is, a year is ample time. And I do not expect, if the grand jury comes back and does not indict Deshaun Watson on this, I think that's kind of the end of the criminal end of it. It's done. And the civil, suits themselves will continue on based on, if the plaintiffs want to continue forward, if they want to settle, if they want to have their day in court, that will continue on. But this is, right now, I think the biggest hurdle for Deshaun Watson and his camp is to figure out what the criminal end of this is going to be, if an indictment is going to be handed down or not. And if it's not, if he does not get indicted on a felony count, I think Rusty Hardin, his attorney, would then turn to the NFL and say, okay, criminal aspect of this is wrapped. Do you want to meet with Deshaun? Do you want to interview with Deshaun for your investigation so we can find out basically what your findings are, your determination, and whether or not he's going to be suspended in 2022.
And then the sweepstakes will presumably begin once we get more clarity on his legal situation. No shortage of teams in need of a franchise quarterback. As we got, so Monday is the legal tampering period starts, if it hasn't started already. We'll talk to you again on Monday, Charles, hopefully. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, which team, pick either one, you don't have to pick both, which team or perhaps player do you have your eye on that you're kind of hearing the most buzz about that could really open some eyes at the start of free agency when people really come out swinging?
Well, the Jacksonville Jaguars are interesting because they have a ton of money, most money in the NFL, I believe, under the cap right now. And the offensive line is in such a state of disrepair that even, franchise tagging Cam Robinson, you still have an opportunity there to make a run at Teron Armstead from the New Orleans Saints is quite possibly going to be the most coveted free agent out there, aside from like J.C. Jackson, obviously from the New England Patriots, the cornerback. But Armstead he is a true blue franchise tackle, and there are going to be plenty of teams that are interested in that. The reason why I think Jacksonville's so interesting is because they have that first pick in the draft. And if they were to pursue Armstead, I believe that would be indicative that the first pick is going to end up being Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive end out of Michigan. It's possible that Jacksonville and Doug Peterson, they just say, you know what, the offensive line's a problem. Let's resolve it. Let's pour every resource we have right now this offseason into that, fix it in front of Trevor Lawrence. We're going to take a tackle first. We're going to sign an offensive tackle. Ike Ekwonu, the kid out of NC State, you could take him first, start him year one at guard. He could play guard. He'd be a very good guard. And then if you let Cam Robinson go in a year, then you transition him over to a tackle spot. And you sort of add three assets this offseason and then kind of adjust as you go. But I am very curious to see how exactly that proceeds. Another guy who's interesting only because he's made it sort of interesting himself is Von Miller, because I think there's a chance that Von Miller could go back to Denver, and you're sitting there and you just think, how perfectly has Denver's front office and that general manager, George Payton, played this, that he gets draft capital out of Von Miller for paying his salary. He goes and wins his ring, but then Von could potentially come back, and he went and secured a quarterback in the process of all this.
Right there.
Yeah, it really is.
That's a mad move right there. It's re-sign a dude that you traded.
Yeah. You're cheating. Yeah, that's the cheat. That's the Madden cheat, where the CPU's letting you do things that don't really happen in the real world.
That's right. Yeah. That's not fair. Hey, my last one is just like this is the state of quarterbacking in the league. And we talked to Jim Trotter about this, what Washington was doing with Carson Wentz and how brilliant it was. Chris Ballard to be able to dump the whole salary on him and get draft picks and possibly an extra second. But do you sense, I know you have a lot of conversations with people with decision-making power in the league. Do you get a sense that it's not just we all know quarterback is the most important position, but teams are just flat out in a panic, scared, like, hey, don't go in the basement. The killers go get you down there, kind of scared. Like, how would you characterize this, the state of general managers looking at this position and coaches?
Well, first off, you have to ask yourself and be honest with yourself, is a quarterback coming to my franchise willingly? Okay. If you're going to have the Deshaun Watson conversation, at least in that vein, it's the same as the Russell Wilson conversation. Does he want to be here? He has a no trade clause. Deshaun does, just like Russ did. And, I understand what Jim was saying about, look, at the end of the day, a team holds the cards. And if they want to play hardball, they can do that. You can. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. It sucks. It's just a bad avenue to go down. And I tend to believe it makes things worse. And you end up damaging the asset you hold even more, because once it's clear it's a knife fight between you and your starting quarterback, teams are not going to be inclined to offer more. They're typically inclined to either be patient and let the market come to them, or, you know, they'll back away and potentially offer less. And so, you know, Cleveland with Baker Mayfield is a good example. Baker Mayfield, when Cleveland was in the, you know, during the season, was sort of exploring, okay, what's the offseason going to look like? Not a lot of quarterbacks are going to go, hey, yeah, trade me to Cleveland. I want to go to Cleveland. It's just, unfortunately, that's a reality. And so certain franchises, you have to either risk, you know, roll the dice on a damaged goods quarterback, or you have to find something homegrown and build it like, say, a Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Not a lot of quarterbacks were going to go, not elite quarterbacks aren't like, hey, sign me up to go play in Cincinnati prior to Joe Burrow being there. It's the same for Washington. I don't think you're going to find elite level quarterbacks that are like, yeah, sign me up to go there, where, you know, things seem to be such a mess. And I think that's part of why they take the risk that they do on Carson Wentz, although I think they probably overpaid. They were bidding against themselves in that particular situation.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.